you guys. Happy Sunday. It's been quite an eventful day. We had church this morning, and went out to my sister's pond and did a little bit more praise and worship today. Uh, and now I'm attempting to change the scenery a little bit because I was kind of getting bored of where I was reading at. And I'm on my mom's front porch, so we're going to try this despite the dogs barking in the background, the occasional firing of a shotgun, it sounds like, the cat in my feet, and the wind chimes blowing in the wind. We're going to try to do this. So, let's see. Chapter 5. So, to recap, our main character, Michael Holden, has so far met the first person he met was President Truman, and who taught him all about, go back to chapter 3, all about the first decision for success being the buck stops here, so accepting responsibility for your actions, and then the second chapter that he met someone in, he met King Solomon, who taught him lessons about seeking wisdom. And so let's see who we're going to meet today in chapter 5. I will seek wisdom. After reading those words, Michael closed his eyes and tensed his body, preparing for the dizziness he had felt before. This time he was ready. At first, nothing happened, but just as he was about to relax, he opened his eyes to see his fingers literally sliding through the ivory throne as if it were air. The next moment, Michael heard the loudest noise he had ever heard in his life. Thunder? He thought, and looked toward the sky. Before he could answer himself, his hand slammed into his chest, grabbed his shirt, and yanked him to the ground. "Get down, man!" the owner of the hand yelled as he pushed Michael's face to the dirt. "I don't know if you can get shot, but let's not find out, okay?" Michael turned his head in panic and stared at the man who had pulled him down. He was older than Michael, maybe mid-30s, with dark brown hair and a long bushy mustache. He wore dark blue trousers with a faded yellow stripe down the side and a shirt that was beyond dirty. The clothes, like their owner, looked as if they had not been washed in a month. He was rather thin and probably tall. It was hard to tell because he was laid out on the ground, firing an old rifle over a pile of rocks. The sound Michael thought was thunder was actually the sound of cannon fire. Bullets whined off the rocks like swarms of angry bees. All around him, Michael heard howls of anger and pain. Cannons, rifles, and soldiers combined to create a sound so loud that Michael had to scream to be heard. That wasn't a problem. In fact, at the moment, it was the most natural thing in the world to do. He was terrified. He grabbed the man's shoulder and cried, "Who are you?" "Chamberlain," the man yelled, reloading his rifle from the muzzle. "Chamberlain of the 12th Maine. The 20th Maine." And he turned to fire again. "Where are we? What's going on?" Michael had never been so scared in his life. "Stay down," Chamberlain shouted. "No time now. We'll talk later. I hope." Chamberlain continued to fire downhill, reload, and shout encouragement to the men around him. Michael saw that they were almost at the top of a steep, wooded hill that sloped down and away from them. Beyond Chamberlain, Michael witnessed scenes of war and death that were far worse than any gruesome movies he had seen on the subject. When an arm fell across Michael's leg, he looked down into the eyes of the soldier who had collapsed and realized that the soldier was even younger than he, and now would never be any older. Michael stared into the dead boy's face until Chamberlain's hand broke his trance. The man gently brushed the young soldier's eyes, closing them, and said, "Nilsen, he was a good kid." He gestured to a man obviously dead, lying across the wall, no more than 10 yards away. That was his father. Both joined when this regiment was formed last fall. There were thousands of us then. The 300 that are left are strung out along the piles of rocks. Chamberlain stood up and offered his hand to Michael. Helping him to his feet, he said, I'm Colonel Chamberlain, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. I know why you're here, but I don't know your name. I'm Michael Holder, sir. Is it safe to be standing up? For the moment, Chamberlain replied, as he pulled a small twig from his mustache. But they'll surely be back. That was the 4th time they made a try for us already. Who are they? Michael stammered. The colonel cocked his head and frowned. Why, these boys. The Army of Northern Virginia. This battle stretches all the way to a little town about a mile that way. Chamberlain pointed with his rifle. What's the name of the town? Michael asked, sensing another history review. Gettysburg, Chamberlain offered. Ever hear of it? Michael nodded. The Civil War? He whispered. What? Chamberlain, I said, this is the Civil War? Chamberlain snorted. That may be what you call it, but stick around. I can assure you there's nothing civil about it. Come with me, he said, beginning to walk. We won't have much time. The colonel climbed onto a big rock and helped Michael up beside him. You can see them from here, he said. Michael squinted through the smoke that lay thick in the air. Following Chamberlain's gaze, he saw the gray and pale yellow uniforms of the Confederate Army massing below. Michael could see their hats and the occasional face looking up the hill. Who are you? Michael asked. Chamberlain jerked his head sharply toward the visitor. What? I told you. My name is... Sorry, that's not what I meant, Michael interrupted. No offense, but are you famous? The other people I saw were all, famous. Chamberlain laughed dryly. Famous? 10 months ago I was a school teacher. Now I'm a soldier, for a while anyway. Actually, it was about the time that I joined that I started dreaming about you. I knew what you looked like, how tall you were. The colonel tugged at Michael's sleeve. I even knew you'd be wearing this. These dreams were not like any others. Strange, constant, every night, for months. You want to hear something spooky? Just before you arrived, there in the middle of the fight, I looked up and raised my hand, and you appeared. I closed my fist on your shirt and pulled you down. When I raised my hand to grab you, I knew you'd be there. It was like it was in my dreams. Why are you here? Michael asked. Chamberlain's eyes eyed him curiously. Do you mean the war in general or this specific hill? Both, I guess. Chamberlain stroked his beard. I joined the Union Army for a myriad of reasons. Same as everyone else, really. We got caught up in the patriotism. We were bored. We were ashamed not to join. We thought it'd be quick and fun. For the most part, though, I think the vast majority of our men left their homes and families because it was the right thing to do. Chamberlain was interrupted by one of the men forming behind fallen trees. Colonel, the man yelled, the brush is too thick. We can't see 30 yards. Stay where you are, son, Chamberlain yelled back. They'll be a lot closer than that. Chamberlain was silent for a few moments when Michael prompted him. Colonel, you said you joined because it was the right thing to do. Yes, Colonel continued. Over the centuries, wars have been fought for land or women or money. More than a few times men have fought because a king or president or someone told them to fight. Chamberlain turned to look Michael squarely in the eye. Michael Holder, I say to you now, this is the first time in history that one man fought to see another man free. Most of us Maine boys have never even seen black skin on a man. But if it's true that all men are created equal, then we're fighting for each other. We're fighting because it's the right thing to do. And now I'm just hoping it'll all be worth it. The colonel picked a nearby weed and stood up. He pointed the weed toward the wall. The wall won't hold him much longer. We don't have enough men left. I have a feeling that if we lose the fight, the war will be over. Michael stepped up beside the colonel. Why did you choose this place to defend? I didn't choose it, Chamberlain said dryly. Colonel Vincent placed me here this morning. Why did he put you here, out in the middle of nowhere? Michael pressed. We are the extreme left of the Union Army. The 83rd Pennsylvania is formed on our right, but to our left, nothing. We are the end of a line that runs from here all the way back to Gettysburg. That means I cannot withdraw. If the Confederate Army flanks us, If the Rebs overrun us, they'll come in behind our cannons and barricades, and the Army of the Potomac will be forfeited. 80,000 men would be caught from the back with no protection. And if they're going to try that, first they'll have to come through me. At that very second, Michael heard an eerie sound echoing from down the hill, rising to a high, thin pitch, 1,000 voices strained in a long, continuous scream. It was the rebel yell. They were coming. Michael caught glimpses of the soldiers through the trees as they ran up the steep hill. Chamberlain had just turned to direct Michael off the rock when a cannon shell hit. It struck the base of the rock and threw both men into the air. As Michael hit the ground, he felt like a giant vacuum had sucked all the air from his body. Before he could check to see if he'd been injured, before he could even breathe, Chamberlain had him by the arm, dragging him to the protection of the wall. Only the cannons were firing now, Michael realized as he tried to get his lungs working again. He could still hear the blood-curdling yells of the rebels working their way up the hill. He rolled onto his knees and glanced over the wall. They were within sight. It seemed to Michael that the Confederate army was about to step into his lap. Shoot, he thought. They're right here. Shoot. It felt like an eternity, but finally Michael heard Chamberlain call out the order. Hit 'em! A long, rolling crack of rifle fire rang out. It began near Michael and ran like a fuse up the line to the right. Scores of rebels fell on the first volley. The rebels were more careful after that, using trees to shield them from the deadly fire, but still they came. Chamberlain was directing his men as he had moved some distance from Michael. A few of the rebels had reached the wall now, and most of the shooting was point blank. The colonel had drawn his pistol and continued to fire at targets all around him, until without warning the rebels pulled back. As suddenly as they appeared, they withdrew. Chamberlain's men cautiously stood up and took a look around. Michael walked quickly to the colonel, who was walking away from him. The rock wall was draped with the bodies of blue and gray. He passed a man who was crying and cursing as he held a younger man in his arms. Jogging to catch up with Chamberlain, Michael reached out and touched his shoulder. "Colonel," he said. Chamberlain stopped, staring straight ahead. "Colonel, I knew you were very busy, and I don't want to bother you, but why am I here?" Chamberlain slowly shook his head. "I don't know. I only knew that you would come. There's something I should learn from you." Michael pleaded. "Think, what could it be?" The colonel smiled slightly and raised his eyebrows. "I am fairly certain I have nothing you would care to learn. I'm a teacher with a cause in my heart and men to lead. These poor men, their leader has no real knowledge of warfare or tactics. I am only a stubborn man. That is my greatest advantage in this fight. I have deep within me the inability to do nothing. I may die today, but I will not die with a bullet in my back. I will not die in retreat. I am, at least, like the Apostle Paul, who wrote, 'The one thing I do, I press toward the mark.'" "Do you have a note to give me?" Michael asked. For a second, Michael could see that Chamberlain did not understand his question. Then recognition flared in his eyes. "Yeah, I do. I had almost forgotten." Digging into his pocket, he pulled out a small pouch. The pouch was hand-sized, navy blue, with 2 crossed swords, the symbol of a fighting man, embroidered on the flap. It had been sewn from stout cloth, but the rough treatment it had received had worn the pouch of the moleskin softness. The 2 gold buttons that closed the flap were metal, engraved with an image of an eagle. The pouch was beaten and threadbare, but it was still handsome, regal in a sense, the possession of an officer. Chamberlain opened the pouch and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "I wrote this more than 2 months ago," he said, passing the paper to Michael. He said, "I'm a little foggy on what I actually wrote. I woke up in the middle of the night after one of those dreams. The words you have there were rumbling around in my head as plain as day. I lit the lamp, found an inkwell, and put the paper. I knew they were for you." "Thank you," Michael said, taking the paper in his hand. "My pleasure," Chamberlain replied. "All of this has been a very curious situation. By the way, how'd you get out here?" Michael held up the paper. "All I have to do is read this," he snapped his fingers, "and I'm gone." Chamberlain looked around him, noticing several men approaching. He put his hands on Michael's shoulders, squeezed it, and said, "If that's all you have to do, then, brother, you might want to read it now." He began to leave, then looked back at Michael. Still in his hand was the small canvas pouch. Holding it out, he offered it to Michael. Wordlessly, Michael took the gift and watched the colonel walk away. Everything in him wanted to take Chamberlain's advice. Read the paper now, he told himself. Get out of here. But something kept nudging him to stay to watch. After placing a piece of paper back into the pouch, Michael shoved the whole thing in his jean pocket and eased up to the group of men surrounding Colonel Chamberlain. Tozier, Chamberlain called to a soldier who had thick wad of torn cloth stuck into a hole of his shoulder where he had been wounded earlier while carrying his battle flag. No help from the 83rd, Trotter growled. They're shot to ribbons. All they can do is extend our line a bit, and we're getting murdered on the flank. Can we extend? Chamberlain asked. There's nothing to extend, sir, another man answered. Over half of our men are down. How are we for ammunition? We've been shooting a lot. I know we've been shooting a lot. I want to know how we're holding out. I'll check, sir. As the man moved off, a voice came from a young soldier who had climbed a tree. They're forming again, Colonel. Colonel Chamberlain looked to see the boy pointing downhill. They're forming up right now, and they've been reinforced. There are more of them this time. Sir, an officer out of breath stumbled into the mist. Colonel Chamberlain, sir, Colonel Vincent is dead. Are you sure, Thomas? Yes, sir. He was shot at the first of the fight. We were firmed up by Weed's brigade in the front, but now Weed is dead. They moved Hazlitt's battery up top. Hazlitt's dead too. The soldier who had gone to check ammunition came running back. Sir, it began, we're out. 1-2 rounds per minute at the most. Some of the men have nothing at all. Chamberlain turned to the thin man standing to his right. Spear, he said calmly, tell the boys to take ammunition from the wounded and dead. Maybe we should think about pulling out, sir. We will not be pulling out, Sergeant, Chamberlain replied grimly. Carry out my orders, please. Colonel, Tozier spoke up. Sir, we won't hold them again. You know we won't. Sir, the boy came from the tree. Here they come. Michael had been listening to the exchange between the officers, fascinated by the horror of their situation. But when he heard the rebel yells, coursing up through the trees once more, the blood turned icy cold. I've waited too late to read the paper, he thought. I'll never get out of here now. As he grabbed for the pouch, a calm washed over him, and he felt the same urge. Wait, watch, listen, learn. Chamberlain was standing in full view on top of the wall, his arms crossed, staring down at the advancing enemy. Sergeant Spear had returned and was standing in the colonel's feet. Tozier and the 2 other men were bunched below. Michael stood several feet behind the group. Sir, Tozier shouted, give an order. Chamberlain remained stoic. He walked away from the group of men, and Michael heard him speaking softly in a firm, resolved voice. We can't retreat, he said to himself. We can't stay here. When I'm faced with the choice of doing nothing or doing something, I will always choose to act. I am a person of action. Turning his back to the rebels, he looked down at his men. Fix bayonets, he called. At first no one moved. They simply stared at him with open mouths. We'll have the advantage of moving downhill, Chamberlain said. Fix bayonets now. Execute a great white wheel of the entire regiment. Swing the left first. Sir, wait. What's a great white wheel? One of the officers yelled, but the colonel had already jumped from the rocks. Tozier answered the question. He means to charge. A great white wheel is an all-out charge. Michael watched in awe as Chamberlain drew his sword, leaped up onto the wall again, and shouted, Bayonets! Bayonets! Turning, the colonel pointed the sword directly at Michael and slightly bowed his head. Then, with the power born of righteousness and fear, the school teacher from Maine roared, Charge! 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 To his men, and they did. Tumbling over the wall, the men who were left raised their voices to meet the voice of their leader. Charge! They cried. Charge! Charge! Michael rushed to the wall and looked downhill. He was stunned to see the advancing Confederate forces stop in its tracks. Almost immediately the rebels turned and ran. A few of the braver souls emptied their rifles before dropping them to follow the rest. About 70 yards down the slope, Michael caught sight of Chamberlain. He had his left hand on the trunk of a tree, and his right he held his sword, the point of which was resting on the carbine of a rebel officer. The man had his hands up. It was over. Michael climbed over the rocks and sat down. With his back to the wall, he pulled his pouch from his pocket. As he looked down the slope, Michael brushed his fingers over the silky smoothness of the material, unbuttoning the flap. Michael removed the paper that Chamberlain had written. After taking a final glance downhill and a deep breath, Michael unfolded the paper. So it got dark a little faster than I thought. Let me turn on my little flashlight. What the flashlight read, obviously. The best part of this story. The third decision for success. I am a person of action. Beginning today, I will create a new future by creating a new me. No longer will I dwell in the pit of despair, moaning over squandered time and lost opportunity. I can do nothing about the past. My future is immediate. I will grasp it with both hands and carry it with running feet. I will seize this moment. I choose now. I am a person of action. I am energetic. I move quickly. Knowing that laziness is a sin, I will create a habit of lively behavior. I will walk with a spring in my step and a smile on my face. Wealth and success hide from the sluggard, but rich rewards come to the person who moves quickly. I am a person of action. I inspire others with my activity. I am a leader. Leading is doing. To lead, I must move forward. Many people move out of the way for a person on the run. Others are caught up in his wake. My activity will create a wave of success for the people who follow. My activity will be consistent. This will instill confidence in my leadership. As a leader, I will have the ability to encourage and inspire others to greatness. It is true, an army of sheep led by a lion would defeat an army of lions led by a sheep. I am a person of action. I can make a decision. I can make it now. God has given me a healthy mind to gather and sort information and the courage to come to a conclusion. I am not a quivering dog, indecisive and fearful. I am a person of action. I am daring. I am courageous. Fear no longer has a place in my life. For too long, fear has outweighed my desire to go for the things I really want. Never again. I have exposed my fear as a vapor, an impostor that never had the power over me in the first place. I do not fear opinion, gossip, or the idle chatter of monkeys, for all are the same to me. I do not feel failure, for in my life failure is a myth. Failure exists only for the person who quits. I do not quit. I am courageous. I am a leader. I seize the moment. I choose now. I am a person of action. So, although it got a little darker on me than I anticipated it would, that was an interesting chapter also. We learn about leadership and what it means to be a leader and what kind of bravery and confidence it takes to be a leader. Be sure to watch tomorrow's assignments. I have some really interesting journal prompts for you. And I think we're just going to take tomorrow to, I'm not going to read the next chapter until Tuesday for you. We're going to take tomorrow to dig a little bit deeper into these 3 chapters that we've read. Chapters 3, 4, and 5. Y'all have a great evening and a great Monday. We'll see you soon. Bye.